Thank you, and welcome back to Through the Keyhole with Lloyd Grossman, the home sleuth, in search of the home truth. So let's join Lloyd right now at house number 2 as we go through the Keyhole.
Through the front door and it's straight into the kitchen, where you're faced with a huge array of tea, running the gamut from the familiarity of Darjeeling to the esoterica of mango indica. And unsurprisingly, there are plenty of mugs to drink that tea from. And they all have slightly sort of dawnish nature to them. Now, whoever cooks in this kitchen is a very particular person, perhaps slightly finicky. Everything has to be just so. Look at the way the spices, for example, are labeled with the date that they were dried. Now, the whole room is presided over by a vivid, near-classical rendition of the final scene from A Winter's Tale. So someone here perhaps has a slightly dramatic character. Leaving the kitchen, which is long and low, you suddenly come into this vast room. It's got beautiful walls made out of this honey-colored Horton stone and very heavy rafters and timber framing. So you can probably guess that it was a barn of immemorial antiquity. It's got all sorts of interesting bits and bobs built into it, like this 17th century sundial. And the front of the balcony is faced with a Gothic revival altar rail. Well, you don't often see one of these. This is a clavichord, which is an early and very elegant form of keyboard. Perhaps slightly out of tune, although that's more likely to be my fingers. You also don't often see houses that have Victorian American organs, or indeed 2 grand pianos. So this is a very musical kind of place. There are heaps of music everywhere. Most of it is devotional music, church music, but the atmosphere here isn't one of sort of somberness. These people have a great sense of humor and an even greater collection of teddy bears. This study has a wall of well-regimented Redoute rose prints, and there's been a major outbreak of bustophilia here. Look, there's an Egyptian queen, there's a local boy made good, and there's the Emperor Augustus wearing a mortarboard. Now, whoever lives here is obviously an omnivorous reader. There are books on all sorts of subjects here, particularly fine collection of books on the heroic day of the wireless. So we've got the Radio Listener's Weekend book, for example, or Hello Boys, the Wireless Uncle's Annual, and even a book on the wireless stars. Then, of course, there are much more conventional things, huge collection of books on poetry. Now, this is an ideal desk for a slightly laid-back writer. There's a chaise longue, and there's a low-level shelf full of key reference books. And I see that whoever lives here is planning a rustic holiday. This knick-knackscape reveals a marked fondness for pigs. There's a little walking pig, there's a micro-miniature pig, and there's a shockingly pink pig. There's also a trio of hedgehogs and a very jolly farmer with his dog. And it's slightly shocking to find amidst this ode to the joys of the bucolic life an old-fashioned radio microphone. Let's look at the evidence. The organ music, the rural retreat, the wireless days. Who lives in a house like this? David, it's over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lloyd. And now for our home and studio audience, here's whose house it is. Right, it's our ace investigator starting off. Carol?
Yes, I think that was just a lucky draw, actually, last time. It was an extremely interesting house, I thought. I love the gallery in the barn. Fantastic feeling of space there. I really enjoy rooms like that. But it was, I thought, by the arrangement of things and the pieces which were in the house, that we're probably looking at a man, and an older man, I would say. Also, the rural retreat, as Lloyd said, that was one of his clues. And obviously the wireless, again, something to do with radio. I thought with the musical things and the church music around, it could have been somebody who hosts songs of praise, but obviously that wasn't that wasn't the right thing to think.
Right, no, well, very good start. Nicky, what did you think?
Well, I don't think this person is Welsh, from the fact that Carol doesn't seem to know who it is.
Right.
Obviously, well, radio, obviously somebody who might be in radio and is obsessed with organs. Because of those two clues, I did think Tony Blackburn, but obviously not. Yeah, that wonderful room there. And also, I did notice on one of the coffee mugs, I think, there was a reference to Oxford University. And there seemed to be a real sort of classical education.
Right, Nina?
I haven't a clue. It's obviously a very academic, learned household. All those books, all that classical music, and the Rose Prince. What saved it for me were the teddy bears and the pigs, because until then it could have looked, for all its grandeur, rather sort of dusty and dry. So there's a sort of cuddly aspect to it as well, which I was glad to see. But I'm no further forward, although the radio must have something to do with it.
It certainly does. Certainly does. And pigs, too.
And pigs. Well, this, you see, and you saying cuddly. Now, this is leading me on to, and there was a lot of, there was a dramatic element in there with the Winter's Tale. And radio, pigs and drama can only mean one programme.
Well, you have got it again, have you?
Well, it's got to be the Archers.
Yes. Yes.
And saying it's an older gentleman
Pardon?
who's very learned,
Yeah.
and who enjoys poetry, it's got to be Phil Archer, I reckon, which is
Norman Painting, yeah? Will you come through the keyhole? Norman Painting, alias Phil Archer. Lovely to see you, Norman.
Thanks very much.
Come and sit down. Well, they got their Chief Inspector Vorderman there.
Yes, I might have known.
Landed you there.
That's what comes of being on countdown in these studios, you see.
Yes, that's right. And where do the teddy bears that Nina likes so much come
Well,
from?
unlike Philip Archer and unlike my radio mum, I've not been married, but I do get visited regularly by the children. That's to say, I was a resident uncle, and then my niece, who is now married and got a family, arrives usually at half-term with the two small children, one who had his 8th birthday with me last week, and a 5-year-old. And I used to get these toys for them and suddenly realized it did look a bit Freudian because I got them all over the place.
Yeah.
And so I suddenly thought it much simpler to put them all into one armchair, and then people could think what they like.
Now, obviously you're still on trial as Phil Archer,
Yes.
but you're hoping to get the job permanently, are you?
Well, it would be nice to have a contract, yes.
It would, yes. Because so far the trials lasted how long?
Well, I first played the part in May 1950, David, you see. But they still book us by the 2.5-hour session, you see.
Do they?
Yes,
Do
indeed.
they really?
Yes, really.
But that's why he's in the Guinness Book of Records, isn't it?
That's
it's
right.
the longest time anyone's ever played the same role on radio.
Or in their rather inelegant language, I think they've changed it now, I was described as the world's most durable radio actor. Made me sound like a sort of saucepan or something.
Oh yes, a saucepan rather than an artiste.
Indeed.
But actually you've written 1,200 of them or so, haven't you, as well?
Yes, just about.
And I mean, how has he since 1950-51, has Phil Archer aged 42 years? Or has he really aged about 27 or what? I mean, does he age by the...
I think the snag is, you see, that he's aged, but my voice hasn't. And so I have to do it not so much by vocal tricks as using an old-fashioned word, acting. So I have to sound like an old man, but not necessarily go like that, otherwise it's phony.
How old is Phil Archer today?
Phil Archer is 2 years younger than I am.
In other words?
Oh, he's about 65, 66.
Yes, and he's got a grandchild.
Just,
Just.
yes. Somebody said to me the other day, how does it feel to be a grandfather? I said, well, don't knock it. We waited long enough for it. And so,
Incidentally, the thing that fascinated me about the house is what happens to a sundial when it's indoors?
it was there when I bought the place, and it was only discovered when the walls were cleaned and treated. Because although it's an interior stone wall, every bit of it has been, first of all, cleaned, and then pointed up, and then covered with a kind of plastic sealant, so that one isn't living quite in a pigsty. And doing that, we discovered among the cobwebs there was this thing, which must have been put there sometime after 1667, and that's all we know.
Well, it looks great. And here is the Through the Keyhole key as our token of our thanks for your being with us. Thank you very much indeed. And the next 42 years, may they be as fruitful?
And with a contract.
And with a contract. To go with it. Thank you very much. Our thanks to Norman Painting and, of course, to Sean Lloyd. And our thanks to Nina Mishkov. Our thanks to Nicky Campbell and to Carol Vorderman. Until the next time, goodbye for now.
There's some disturbing news for Jim MacDonald in Friday's Coronation Street. Stay tuned.